Hi, I'm Bob Spinozzi, and welcome to Small Town. The Boston Red Sox started the season as a top playoff contender in April. They pivoted to a rebuilding mode in July, but finished with a flourish. They'll go into next year with a crop of talented players that include Xander Bogaerts, Mookie Betts, Jackie Bradley Jr., Blake Swihart, All-Star Brock Holt, and several others. And I can't wait. Less than 4 months for pitchers and catchers to report to spring training. Well, now that I've said that, I want to come out swinging and get to the main part of our show. And it's about another baseball team that was in Beantown, the Boston Braves. Now, I'll bet that's news to a lot of you. Boston had a baseball team in the National League. They began playing in the late 1800s and left town just before the 1953 season began. And to talk Braves, I have with me today Jack Holmer, who worked for the team during their last 6 years in Boston. Jack has the scoop on all the hits and misses of the Braves during those years that included a trip to the World Series. Jack, you were a pup when you started working there. First of all, thanks for being with me.
No problem, Bob. Hey, this is great. Yeah, I was a pup. Actually, I started at 13.
Wow.
They couldn't pay me because you had to be 14 before you could get working papers. Now, you have to remember, this is back a long time ago. But that's when I started with the Braves. And it was an interesting trip. 6 years.
What are some of the things that you did for them?
Well, I started off, it's a funny story, but the gentleman across the street from me, Joe Phillips, his brother, Ben Phillips, and we called him Big Ben. And he was about 6'5", 6'6", and he was the head of security at Braves Field. And they had what they called a page boy there, and probably most everybody won't remember Johnny, the Philip Morris fame. That's it. And they had a little uniform. I have a picture of it at home. I'm not showing that one. But they had this little uniform, and they wanted what they called a page boy, and he would just run errands back and forth to the clubhouse from the office and do various things and work basically under Ben, who was Big Ben, Ben Phillips, who was the head of security. But I had to do a lot of things with Duffy Lewis, who was the traveling secretary. Okay. And Duffy was the left fielder from the old Red Sox team, Lewis, Speaker, and Hooper in the great days of the Red Sox. And so that's how I started. And I had to take, believe it or not,
you didn't have to wear that page.
I did for about a week. And then I said to Duffy one day, I said, and he could tell. And he says, "Don't worry about it. You don't have to wear it anymore." And that was the nicest thing that ever happened to me. That suit was something. But it was a great time. It really was. The people I got to know over those 6 years, and we can go into that. And,
but some of the other things you were doing, were you telling me that was it at that point you were taking attendance, really?
Yeah. One of the things that I had to do with Duffy Lewis is at the end of the 5th inning, we would go around and take the turnstiles. Now, that's what they... And, it was click, click, click. So what you did is you went around, took the turnstile, then you took what the closing number was the day before, closing number today, you subtracted the two, and that's how many people came through the turnstile, and that's how we got the attendance. And that was one of the things that I did at the end of the 5th inning of every game that I was there. So
and that started you. You were an accounting major in school, weren't you? That kind of started you off, didn't it?
Yeah, Bob, I had never thought of that, but there you go. Yeah, that probably gave me my pluses and minuses, and which side, as long as the assets stay on the Windows side, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah.
Okay, so you started in '47, really, but now all of a sudden, your second year there, you guys are in a pennant race.
Right, and it was exciting. It really was. It was exciting. Because I could go any place that I wanted to in the ballpark. I'd watch most of the games from the press box. That was the best place to watch them from. But a lot of times I went out to the office was just outside of the right field pavilion at Braves Field, and that's where you just go up that alley and just watch the games from there. And that's an interesting story. That's where all the gamblers congregated. There was probably 50 to 80 of them for every single game that would sit up in the pavilion in a tight group and just with hand signals would do all their gambling. Now this wasn't, I'm not talking about bookies with phones and anything. I'm just talking about gambling amongst themselves.
It's like sitting at a poker table, but they were betting on...
It was amazing. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't think of things like that, but that's what happened. That's what happened. Yeah.
Well, let's get to the season now a little bit. I read that we're in a pennant race now. You're in first place for a good bit of the year.
Yes.
June, you were in first place, and really for the whole summer. And you slipped into second place for a couple days to the very end of August. But then you went back up into first place. And you had two pitchers on that team who were, well, Johnny Sain, who had been a great pitcher for several years. Warren Spahn was just coming into his own.
Yes.
Pretty much
That's right. Yep.
And then you had a couple of other good pitchers, Vern Bigford, and there were a couple of others.
Bill Voiselle. Nelson Potter, in those years, yeah.
But anyway, we're getting into crunch time now. We're getting into September, and Warren Spahn and Johnny Sain pitched a doubleheader on September 6th against the Dodgers.
You remember better than I do.
No,
you've studied it.
I
Okay,
cheated.
go ahead.
They beat the Dodgers in a doubleheader on the 6th. They had an off day on the 7th, rained on the 8th, 9th. It rained for 3 days. So the team didn't play again until the 11th. From the 6th now, they went right back with Spahn and Sain against the Phillies, and they both won again. Next day, the team played. Next day was an off day, September 14th, against the Cubs, Spahn and Sain. Then the following day they played, the following day they were off. September 17th, Sain won on a single game against the Pirates. September 18th, Spahn won against the Pirates. And that triggered a columnist, the Boston Post, a writer by the name of Gerald Hearn, and he wrote a little poem. First we'll use Spahn, then we'll use Sain. Then an off day, followed by rain. Back will come Spahn, followed by Sain, and followed, we hope, by 2 days of rain. Do you remember if that was by necessity necessarily, or they were just going... Southwick, Billy Southwick was...
Billy Southworth.
Southworth was the coach.
Yeah, Billy Southworth.
Do you have any inkling if he was just, I don't know. Back then, first of all, pitchers were a lot durable than they are today, so they could go with 3 days rest.
That's right. Complete games were, the norm.
Yeah.
Complete games. And now that's not the norm anymore. But no, I think the durability of those players and what they were willing to do was much different than it is today. But I don't honestly remember, that being a choice. I mean, if I were the manager, you got two
go
aces.
With your best.
You go with your best, especially when you're fighting for the pennant. Or you're in the World Series. You're gonna go with your best.
Now, I mentioned several doubleheaders in there, which is not news to you because we both know that back then, 154 game schedule,
right.
Almost every Sunday, or probably just about every Sunday there's a doubleheader.
That's right.
Holidays there were doubleheaders. Yep. Memorial Day doubleheader.
Right.
July 4th doubleheader.
You got your money's worth.
Labor Day doubleheader.
You got your money's worth. And you know what a reserve seat cost? A good reserve seat cost.
Not a grandstand seat, but a reserve seat.
Yeah, no, a grandstand reserve seat was $2.80.
Really?
$2.80. If you wanted to sit in a box seat, you paid $3.60.
Really?
If you wanted a seat in the jury box, which was out in right field, that's where Tommy Holmes made his name, 50 cents
Yeah.
to get in to see a ball game.
Well,
I can't tell you what beer costs, so
although you're going to show us a picture from the Stork Club. Why don't you pull that up now?
Okay.
You're how old in this picture?
I'm 14.
So pull it up to the.
I'm 14.
You're 14 years old.
I'm 14 years
Now,
old.
you just mentioned beer.
Yeah.
You're somewhere where they're drinking a lot of beer and other.
I'm drinking Cokes.
You're drinking
believe me.
Cokes.
I'm drinking Cokes. I'm not sure what the other gentlemen.
Well, where are you?
But we're in the Stork Club in New York City. And the gentleman right to my left in that picture, you can tell who I am, I hope, is Harry Hooper from the famous outfield of Lewis, Speaker, and Hooper. Next is Duffy Lewis, who was my boss and who took me on these trips and all. And then the other gentleman happened to be, his name was Edgar Vail. He was the president of Jaeger Watch Company. He was just a friend of Duffy's. But this was in New York City at the Stock Club. If you can, I don't know if you can see the background of it or not, but you even see the cigarette girl way in the back. I mean,
You barely,
yeah. But it's an interesting picture. It's one I have sitting on the wall in my office.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Let's get to the World Series.
Go ahead.
You tell me. You were there.
I was there.
You were there?
I was there. I saw the pickoff play. Or
It was
the supposed
against
the Cleveland
Indians. Now, a little bit of a footnote. Well, go ahead. You.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Red Sox, we almost had a city series.
Yeah.
The Red Sox and Cleveland ended up tied at the end of the American League season. The Braves had won the National League, and so they had to have a playoff game, and that was the Denny Gale House, that whole thing, and the Red Sox lost. But one of the interesting things, and they never really played it up. There was a little mention of it, but who do you think the Braves were rooting for?
Well, I know because you told me, but you can tell the folks.
The Braves were rooting for Cleveland Indians. They didn't want to see the Red Sox. The Red Sox held 34,000, and you have to remember the big pay for in baseball in those years. I mean, if you made $10,000, $8,000 or something, you made a lot of money. But they got paid a share from the World Series, and naturally, that share went up. When you could put, what was it, 60,000 or something?
Well, I'm going to go over that.
Yeah. You could put so many. You could almost put in double the number of people into Cleveland as you could into Fenway Park. So the Braves were not outwardly, but hoping that naturally that Cleveland would win it, which is,
Well,
probably wasn't very favorable to Boston, but
the Braves are going out to Cleveland and playing in Municipal Stadium.
Right.
Unfortunately, the Braves lost this series in six games.
Six games, right, 4-2.
And some of the attendance figures out in Municipal Stadium: 70,306, 81,897, 86,288, which feeds into exactly what you're talking about. Right. I don't have salaries on the players back then, but I did find one on a super sub, Sibby Sistek?
Sibby Sistek, nice, super guy.
His annual salary was $8,000. His playoff share was $4,571.
My point. my point. And you have to remember, too, I don't remember what it was then, but the players only participate, I think it's in the first 4 games. I think it's 2 games in 2 games. I think that's where they get their share out of, so that you can't have any shenanigans. Yeah. In baseball,
I want to go back while we're talking about salaries. I want to talk for a minute. Let's go back to Fenway Park. They opened the season in Fenway in 1912, I believe, and at that time the Braves were playing at the South End grounds on Columbus Ave, and the seating capacity in that stadium was about 7,000. And the 1914 Braves won the pennant, and their stadium was being constructed, their new stadium. And they asked for permission to play in Fenway. And they got to play in Fenway Park, because now they're playing in front of 30, at the time, 34,000
Right.
instead of 7,000 than the other stadium. And then, turning the table a little bit, in 1915, the Red Sox won the pennant. They beat the Phillies that year in the World Series, and they played in Braves Stadium
Field, yep.
because the new Braves Field had that much more attendance.
Yeah,
back
well, was it 46 or something like that?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I read 40,000, which those numbers are meaningless, aren't they?
Yeah, because you had standing room.
Yeah.
You had a big standing room.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, anyway. But let's, those old stadiums, I want to talk about Fenway a little bit. And when we talk about Fenway back then, it was nothing like it is today. When the park was built in 1912, the part of the outfield extending from the left field foul pole to the center field pole was a lot different. The outfield approaching the wall had a terrace, which was common for ballparks in that day. And this 10-foot embankment was the difference in grade level between the street and the field. The slope also warned the outfielders that they were close to the fence, much like a warning track does today. Now also the area could be roped off to handle overflow crowds and increase game day attendance, which is what Jack is talking about. Now that whole area that I'm describing had a name, Duffy's Cliff, named after the first star Red Sox left fielder Duffy Lewis, who was also in that picture that Jack showed us. Now the stadium had many other differences, but back then, like today, any discussion about left center field made for a monster of a conversation. The years passed, and Fenway remained largely unchanged. And then in 1933, the Red Sox were sold to Tom Yawkey. The new owner had deep pockets, and he was going to spend freely on players and on a new look for Fenway Park. That plan was temporarily derailed by a fire at the stadium. When construction continued, it went full force, and the stadium was completed on time to open the 1934 season. Mr. Yawkey had spent $1 million Depression-era dollars to completely renovate Fenway Park. And the changes dramatically altered the park's look. As part of the alteration, the 10-foot embankment was flattened, and the 25-foot high fence behind it was taken down. That entire area was replaced with a 37-foot high wall that featured a hand-operated scoreboard and, for its time, high-technology lights to indicate balls and strikes. And that wall and the rest of the park received a Dartmouth green paint job, and that's the color that it's known for today. You went to a few games there, you must have.
Oh, yes. Yes, yeah. No, we reciprocated. They would come over to us, and we'd come over to them. That was another thing that I had interesting. With working with Duffy Lewis, he was in charge of the passes and the freebies and everything else. So I would have a stack of tickets like this for every game on my desk or in my pocket, and these people, and you'd always have to keep it. Morris Tobin, Secretary of Labor, was a big Braves fan. And he always would call at the very last moment. I always had 4 tickets, almost with his name on them, that I knew I couldn't touch. But at the last minute, if I had a lot of tickets, I'd call some of my friends at Milton, because I lived in Milton, and I'd call them and say, "Get over here to the ballpark, ask for the tickets at the pass desk, and come on in." So hey. A lot of my old schoolmates saw a lot of games.
Yeah.
Saw a lot of games.
It was Tobin Bridge, probably named after that Tobin. We don't know.
Probably.
Could be.
Yeah. I think it probably was. Yeah. It probably was. I hadn't thought of that, but I mentioned I lived in Milton, and
it took you a while to get to work, didn't it?
Milton, it basically is the first town south of Boston. But I would have to take, there were 2 buses that came close to me. I had to walk maybe a quarter of a mile to get either one of them. It was the Parkway East or the Parkway West. And I would take that bus down to Mattapan Square. Now, remember, I'm 14 years old. I take that bus down to Mattapan Square, get on a trolley at Mattapan Square, go to Ashmont. From Ashmont,
Dorchester.
To Ashmont. Get on a subway at Ashmont and go to Park Street. When I get to Park Street, get on a trolley to go out to Braves Field. And it used to cost me like a nickel, a dime.
Yeah.
That's what it cost me. But, just stop and think. 14 years old.
Not a lot of night games, too.
Yeah. Night games and everything. Now, my mother and my father came down and picked me up. We usually went Central Avenue, which doesn't mean anything to you, but that was one of the stops. And but you wouldn't think of letting.
No, not today.
You can't do that today. Can you be Mattapan Square?
Yeah.
Mattapan Square.
Well, but then to get to work at the Braves Field. Now, I talked a lot about Fenway Park. Yeah. And your field was brand new.
Right.
Well, at this point, it's 30 years old.
Yeah.
But what was the very interesting fact about that stadium, James Gaffney was one of the owners, I believe, right?
Right.
And the stadium itself was right off of Commonwealth Avenue in Allston. Mm-hmm. And the stadium was built between Babcock and Gaffney Streets.
That's right.
Off of Com Ave. Mm-hmm. Off a ways, off of Com Ave. And Gaffney, being a real estate man, sold the different lots on the frontage for Com Ave for a nice hefty profit for himself.
Yeah. And then the big armory was right next door.
The National Guard Armory.
Yeah.
Massachusetts National Guard Armory. Right. But anyway, I'm getting to a point in that your way recessed in the back abutting railroad tracks, which was really smoky back then.
Oh yeah. It was, the railroad, they would let off a lot of smoke, a lot of smoke. But everybody got used to it. Like everything else, just get used to it.
I'm going to get back a minute to the 1947 Braves and talk about a very, very significant contribution that the franchise had made and a tradition that they started. The Jimmy Fund. Started in 1947 when the Variety Children's Charity of New England and the Boston Braves joined forces to help a 12-year-old cancer patient, Jimmy. On a national radio broadcast, millions of listeners heard Jimmy visit with several Brave players who were by his side in the hospital. Jimmy was with his heroes. Listeners from everywhere sent contributions to buy Jimmy a television so he could watch the Braves play. And that launched a grassroots charity movement of walks, runs, and a telethon, the Jimmy Fund. It brings hope to thousands of children and adults facing cancer today. Now, you remember that very well.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I was there at the...
you were there at that first Jimmy Fund.
That's right. And the first telethon that we did in the studio, and everything else, yes, I was part of that. I was in that, yes.
And for your town of Milton, you were telling me you also did something specific.
Yeah, the Jim Britt was the announcer, and he interviewed me at the ballpark, and he said, what are people doing? And all of a sudden it came to me, and this was, it wasn't in 47, it was, I think, a year later. But anyway, I said, my class at Milton High School will go out next weekend, or some weekend, and go door to door to collect for the Jimmy Fund. And I got a number of my classmates to Milton High School, class of 51, and they went out and went door to door and collected for the Jimmy Fund, and that was one of the first, public outreach to get contributions in, other than what had been done up to that point. So it was good. Yeah. It was Jimmy Fund was very, very good, and then the Red Sox took it over when the Braves left. Yeah.
By the way, Jimmy's real name was Einar Gustafsson. He was from New Sweden, Maine, and he was named Jimmy by Dr. Sidney Farber to protect his identity. He died in 2001. He was 65 years old. Now, April 15th, 1947, Jackie Robinson was the first Afro-American player in Major League Baseball, which leads us to a very sad and difficult part of your job in 1950.
Yep. Yeah, one of the things when we went on the road, now you have to remember that the National League and the American League basically went as far as St. Louis. Yeah, there were no West Coast teams, this, that, and the other thing. So, basically we went as far as St. Louis, and in 1950, it was in my year, right?
Jethro was Rookie of the Year in 50.
Sam Jethro was the first African-American player in Boston.
Right.
And he came a nice guy, super guy. Nobody on the Braves, to the best of my knowledge, ever had a problem. None of the fans had a problem. It was not a big deal, which was great. It wasn't a big deal until we got to St. Louis. And I was on that trip. I did take in the summertime. Naturally, when I was at school, I couldn't, but in the summertime, I did take a few trips with the Braves. And we were in St. Louis, and I can remember Duffy saying to me, he said, Sam can't stay in the Chase Hotel where the team was staying. And I forget what my reaction was, but I said, okay, so what do we do? He says, well, we have to get him a room down in a different section of town. Okay, and so Duffy made the arrangements. I didn't make the arrangements, but then he came to me and he said, we have to take a check down and pay where he's going to be staying. He said, would you do it? And so I got a taxi, and I had to go into a different section of St. Louis, and I took Sam Jethro down there. And I mean, what he, as a professional ball player and everything else, what he had to endure down there compared to what we were used to at the Chase Hotel and everything else was an awakening. It was really an awakening to me, but that's the way it was.
Yeah, you really can't imagine what they're going on in their minds.
It really, that was probably one of the most memorable things that is stuck with me.
Yeah.
That having to do that was just that's stayed with me for a long time.
Yeah.
It's molded a lot of what I did in college and everything else.
Yeah, stayed with you.
Yeah.
All right, so we're getting into 1951, we're getting into 1952. I do want to mention, just as a point of reference, that in 1948, the pennant year, the home attendance was 1,455,439 went through that turnstile that you were counting.
Yes.
Then in 1952, you weren't counting so much. Attendance had dropped to 282,000. Confession time. One time for a day game, we went out and we took the attendance, and it was under 1,000. Yeah. And you put up another number?
We put up another number.
They all do that.
I didn't do it. No. We jacked it.
Yeah, okay.
We jacked it a little.
Enough said.
Yep.
This is a family show. We can't get into that anymore.
No, but it's the truth.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But anyway, you were in spring training in 1953. Spring training now. Mm-hmm. And March 14th is when Lou Perini, the owner, said, we're moving.
March 16th.
March 16th. It took a couple of days.
I remember the day, but no.
But it took a couple of days for it to be voted on. The other owners had to vote on it.
No, I understand. But I was in college at the time. I was not down at spring training when that happened. I was up at UMass. And I'll tell you, that was a...
Can you imagine?
That was a sad day.
But so you didn't join the team, you didn't join the team.
No.
Because here you are, you're a baseball player, you've got your apartment or your home, and all of a sudden, in 3 weeks, you have to find a place to live in Milwaukee.
That's right.
And I think you were telling me that Warren Spahn was in the process of buying a diner.
He had a diner.
He had a diner
He had
on
a diner on
Commonwealth
Commonwealth Avenue. Yeah. He owned a diner on Commonwealth Avenue.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and anyway, you moved to Milwaukee. I just want to briefly touch on Milwaukee, the Milwaukee years. The first year in Milwaukee, the Braves drew over 1.8 million. They finished second. And then in 1954, they finished third, 55 second, 1956 second, 57 and 58 finished first both times. Was it 2 World Series that they won? Or
Yes.
Two World Series. Yeah. And then in 59 and 60, they finished second. So we would have had this powerhouse here had they stayed.
Yeah. No, it was interesting because they did. The first couple of years they went to Milwaukee from Boston. They came back and played an exhibition game against the Red Sox. And I always got invited to that game to go out to eat with them and everything else. In fact, that's how I met Hank Aaron. Hank Aaron and I had dinner together one night, and the nicest guy that you ever want to meet, really and truly. I used to see the ball players at that point, but it was.
But you just hit on one of the main reasons why they were so good right after they left, because Eddie Matthews had been, I believe, Rookie of the Year the last year in Boston.
Yep.
But right after that, you had Aaron come up,
Yep.
you had Joe Adcock, Del Crandall, Lou Burdette, Joe Bruton.
Everybody went crazy. Everybody went crazy.
Yeah. And the fact that they finished second for most of those years that they didn't finish first was a tribute to them, because there were only 8 teams in each league. And it's not like today. It's not diluted. I'll use the word diluted compared to back then.
That's right. No, it's true. It's true. You look at the number of major leaguers. If you take 25 players and multiply it by 16, and now you take 25 players and you multiply. I mean, certainly it's diluted.
Yeah.
Certainly it's diluted.
You brought a couple of other things. I want to show them quickly.
This is.
Well, one thing that I have. This is.
This hangs on the wall in my office. This is over 60 years old. This is the original, but it's interesting. There's a couple of pins here, and this is a Babe Ruth pin. A Babe Ruth pin that I happen to put up there. Just various things. But one of the interesting.
Hold it up.
I'm sorry. There you go. There's the Boston Braves.
So you started to say.
They had to have something back in the 48 World Series where a pin, so that the various people who could go anywhere to go to the meals and identify yourself. And you know what they did? They took the nickel, and they took the Indian and the nickel, and they had them. This is illegal because they're defacing the currency. Okay, but they cut that out. They had somebody cut these out, and it's a little pin, and put the thing on. And it's a little pin. I have it at home. I should have brought it, but that was the authorization. As you see, the Secret Service has these pins and everything else. That was so that you could go any place you wanted to in the ballpark and into the meals and into the various things, because we use the. Across the street, the Armory. We use the Armory for the banquets and everything else. And that was the interesting little thing that I have at home. Yeah.
Well, I have one thing here, and I showed this to you earlier, and you told me that you remembered it. It's if the Braves are trailing the Indians 3-1,
right,
and they came back to win Game 5.
Right.
Warren Spahn came on in relief.
Right.
Again, one more time. Pitchers were much more durable back then. They went pitched in relief. They started, and that's just the way it was.
To see the name Boiselle on there, this was an interesting guy. He came from 96 South Carolina, and he had to get special permission to use the number 96, but they gave it to him on his uniform, 96. And he
Meaning typically back then numbers didn't go beyond 50.
Right. They had some category in this. But at any rate, he and I got friendly. When we were on the road, in fact, the two of us went to see Babe Ruth's Story. Came out while we were on the road down in New York, and Bill Voisell and I went together to this thing. And he was a character. But I said to him, I said, Bill, I says, by the time you finish a sentence, I forgot how you started it. And he laughed like, crazy. I mean, it was just funny to him. I wasn't insulted or anything else, but I said, Bill, I can't remember how you started that sentence. But he was a great guy. He was and I was very disappointed. I've tried on a couple of trips down south to go through South Carolina and stop at 96 in the sea, but he died about 4 years ago. He died about 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, look, that was great, thinking back.
Hey,
and now,
I love it. I love it because it was such a great
we've
time
enlightened a whole bunch of other folks that we had a National League team.
That's right. That's right. And it was a good team. It was a good team.
Thank you.
No problem, Bob.
Okay. Well, that's almost it for today. But I'd be remiss in not mentioning one very special Red Sox player. He went by the Kid, Teddy Ballgame, the Splendid Splinter, the greatest hitter who ever lived, Ted Williams. Williams spent his entire career with the Red Sox. He played from 1939 to 1960, but he missed the 43, 44, and 45 seasons to serve in the Navy and Marines during World War II. He also missed much of the 1952 and 53 baseball seasons when he served in Korea during that conflict. His baseball accomplishments include a .344 lifetime batting average, 521 home runs. He had a 482 on-base percentage, the highest of all time in the history of baseball. He had 6 batting titles, 2 of those at age 39 and 40. And on September 28, 1960, the Kid had the last at-bat of his 21-year career. Let's listen in to Curt Gowdy.
1-1 to Williams. Everybody quiet now here at Fenway Park after they gave him a standing ovation of 2 minutes, knowing that this is probably his last time at bat. 1 out, nobody on, last of the 8th inning. Jack Fisher into his windup. Here's the pitch. Williams swings, and there's a long drive to deep right. That ball is going, and it is gone. A home run for Ted Williams in his last time at bat in the Major League.
Okay, well, that's it. Thank you for watching. You have a great day.